She's an actress, she's a musician, she's a director, she's a writer.
I remember the day that it came out, I cried.
She's a fascinating human being who does a lot with her life.
So I remember being 14, watching Disney and being like, I could do that. And then 4 years later, I was on the show as a series regular.
Our conversation covers her solo travel trips through Europe, filming a show in Brazil, and she tells us an amazing story of feeling like she was gonna get kidnapped in Turkey. The beginning of our friendship, which started with me loving her. Okay, enjoy this talk with Maiara Walsh.
Hello, Devon Werkheiser.
Hey, welcome back to Growing Up, everyone, where we're putting the win in growing up.
Oh, wow.
You like that?
Yeah, you work a long time on that one?
I've really been workshopping it in my room to myself.
Okay, in the mirror, I can see that.
So this was the first time taking it out. How'd it go?
It went all right.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, I'll take it. Maiara, I'm so glad to have you here, and I'm always glad to see you. I'm going to regale my listeners with a little story. I met Maiara on a movie, a terrible movie. Just a terrible movie, but a movie nonetheless. And that's a fun part of being an actor is it's not always about the end result. Sometimes it's about the experience. Mm-hmm. And Maiara has been one of my close friends since then. I was 17, I think, on the movie, and you were 20.
Yes.
And I met this magical creature. Were you on Cory in the House at the time?
It was after that.
Yeah, so you had already...
Yeah, I'd finished Cory.
You had already done Cory in the House. We're on this movie. I meet Maiara, and I'm just so in love. I'm just this is the most beautiful, interesting person I've ever met in the world. You were teaching me about meditation, and you're just a kind and open and just an incredible person. But my little 17-year-old self, that energy was just, I was just blind with love. And we hung out on this movie and became friends. And I tried to kiss her and she swerved. And she swerved one night. I finally got the courage. I was like, oh, this person is so nice to me. I must kiss her. And I went in and she swerved out the way.
I love that your 17-year-old brain thought, yes, I should kiss this 20-year-old. This is a great idea.
Yeah. Listen, when I was 14, I dated multiple 17-year-olds.
Oh,
3 years was a normal gap for me. But yes, I thought yes. And you thought that's a little baby boy.
That's a little child. That is a child. I can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And also don't have the desire at this point in time because you are a baby.
Because this is a little baby boy. Yeah, so that's where our friendship started, was her swerving me on a kiss attempt.
Yes.
And me just quietly taking my shame back to my hotel room and never speaking about it again.
But a beautiful friendship developed from that point forward.
It's true. And it's not like after that, we still went to a concert. It's we stayed friends after that.
A concert?
Yeah.
It was a concert
Cigarettes.
that concert. I thought you were talking about the the other thing that we went to.
I was not referring to that. That actually comes in and out of my memory. Okay. I forget that occurs sometimes. You just reminded me.
Cigarettes was incredible. It was like God cried at the end on the final song. It just started raining. It was beautiful.
Yes.
The other one was a bit strange.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I think we have to now.
Yeah.
So we were shooting this movie in Marin County. Whose idea was it to go to this thing? Was it Preston's and then he didn't come?
Oh, it totally was, wasn't it?
Yeah.
He told us about it. What was it though?
Earth Dance is what it was called.
Dance. So we thought it was going to be a festival with music and food and, in this beautiful mountainside.
Yeah.
It had elements of that. It just happened to be hosted by...
a nudist colony in the woods of Santa Cruz.
Yes.
Listen, we tried to go to this festival that was being held in multiple locations, and there was a main hub that was too far away. So we were like, oh, we'll go to this closer one. Turns out it was a nudist colony in the forest.
Yeah, and I just remember this guy was showing us around his place, just, hanging out.
Yeah.
Fully hanging out.
Yeah.
And we're just looking at each other like, this is interesting.
Yeah. Honestly, our friendships, now that I think about it, our friendship
Yeah.
started on the right foot.
Yeah.
Which is just weird,
Yep.
fun, pranks on set.
Oh my God, the best pranks. We had so much fun.
Awkwardness of trying to kiss you, moving past that, going to a nudist colony,
Yes.
going to see Sigur Rós.
If you really want to build a lifelong friendship, these are the elements that make that a reality.
Yeah. But all that being said, and despite that movie turning out just not worth watching, you're one of my favorite people in the world. And I'm so grateful that movie occurred and all those experiences happened. And like our friendship has only like grown and deepened as we've grown up. And it's one of my favorite things in my life.
Me as well. I'm very grateful for you. We just have that consistent bond that I know that we can count on each other for anything, and that when we are really, really old and wrinkly and senile, we will still be best friends, even if we forget who the other person is. I think like we'll be like, oh, I love this human. I don't know why.
What's your name?
What's your name? You're
lady?
cool and strange.
So tell me about before I met you. Where did you grow up and what kind of kid were you?
Ooh, I was born in Seattle, moved to Brazil, to São Paulo when I was 1 or 2, stayed there for a couple years, then back to Seattle until I was 10, where I moved. Then I moved to LA. I was a very curious kid. I loved exploring and tree houses and climbing trees and getting muddy. I was also very sensitive. I could pick up on everyone's emotions. Couldn't differentiate between someone else's emotions and my emotions. So like life was very confusing. And I was very creative. Like I loved the arts. Drawing, writing, singing, sciences, anything where I could just fully immerse myself in a world of make-believe.
And what kind of teenager were you? Because sometimes being that sensitive and that creative, high school like ain't it. It's not it. It's not the time for all that.
Yeah. I mean, I would say middle school was the hardest time.
Okay.
I was just so tiny and skinny, and I was made fun of all the time. I would go home crying pretty much every day.
Oh, God.
There was a song that they made up about me.
What was the song?
It was really short. It was just like, snap goes my twig. And so they'd call me my twigga because I was a twig. And
Wow.
It was pretty brutal.
Dang.
And then I would say, but high school things started improving. I think when I was 16, I made one of my best. I met one of my best friends, and she was just so funny and weird, and we could be funny and weird together. And then I was like, I can just be myself. And it became so much more fun. We would like go to thrift stores and garage sales and like dress up in weird outfits and then wear them to school. Or, if it was a rainy day, we'd wear rain boots and just go stomping through puddles. And I think allowing myself to be me made the experience slightly better.
And it helped to have a friend
Yes.
who saw you and was in that with you.
Mm-hmm.
Because, by the time I met you, you were 20. I mean, you've grown a lot since. I mean, it's a long time now that we've known each other. But even then, you were on a path of self-realization.
Yeah.
And the way you interacted with people was very kind, very open, but very connected, very... I don't know. You had a confidence about you then at 20. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah. So I don't know if it was all make believe, but I don't feel like it was. I feel like you had obviously a lot had shifted from your middle school crying days to you showing up on set at 20.
Yes, indeed.
How was your experience being on a kids show? You were on Cory in the House a little after Ned's, but it's a similar era of Nick and Disney.
I was 18 when I booked that show.
Okay.
So at that point, I wanted to be Natalie Portman. So like I remember being 14 watching Disney and being like, I could do that. Like I want to do that.
Yeah.
And then 4 years later, I was like on the show as a series regular. But at that point, I wanted to be Natalie Portman. And I was like, I don't want to be on a Disney show right now. I want to be a serious actress. So I remember the day that it came out, I cried.
Wow.
Because it was not what I'd wanted to be, what I wanted to do in that moment.
Yep.
And then I remember by the second season, like everything really just felt like family and I was having fun. I was letting loose more.
Yeah.
And it was a wonderful lesson in being appreciative of what you have when you have it, because our show ended up getting cut short that second season.
Right.
And, you know, the show would have gone for like probably 4 or 5 seasons.
Right. Easy.
Yeah. So it was like, always appreciate you have while you have it.
Yes. And that makes sense though. Like I happened to end up on Nick when I was a kid, so it really like worked. I could have, if I was 18, I wouldn't necessarily want to be on Nick or Disney. But it's funny, I totally get that. Like when Ned's ended, we were all down. We were down if it was going to get picked up to go to high school.
Yeah.
We would have been happy to do that. But when we found out it wasn't, we were all kind of like,
how old were you when it
ended? 15.
Oh, that's great.
But we were all like, oh, cool, we're going to go do other things. In hindsight, it's like, man, I wish that thing ran for 7 more years. And I heard Jennifer Stone, I heard our friend Jen talk about that too on Wizards, of like, when it ended, there was a chance for a spinoff, which she would have been happy to do, but it not going, she had the same thing of like, oh, we're ready to go do other things. But then you look in hindsight, you're like, no, that would have been nice.
Well, you just think you're so grown up at that age.
Exactly.
You know, when you're like, I'm too old for this kind of thing. And you're like, no, you have your whole life ahead of you. Like, enjoy it.
Little did we know how much time you have.
So much time.
How often did I feel like I was grown when I wasn't? It wasn't until 30 that I looked back at all the times I felt grown and independent that I was like, oh, you were a little baby boy. You knew nothing about the world. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I think I'm only now starting to grasp some things.
Yeah. I feel like I can at least see the puzzle pieces fitting together.
Yeah.
I was always in a rush when I was younger. I just wanted things to happen now. And I couldn't understand why the amount of effort I was putting in was not seeing the same or even a fraction of the same return or reward.
Yeah.
And that was extremely frustrating.
Yeah.
And now looking back, I'm like, well, no, I had to go through all of that to really do what I do now and have like built this like very solid foundation where, I feel like I can get through anything and creatively really get through anything.
Yeah. You do about 1.5 million things too.
Yeah.
You directed your first feature during the pandemic, but you've written many scripts, you've directed shorts, you act in everything, you make music, you own an art space in Los Angeles where you hold events and you're constantly painting and creating that place. What else did I miss?
I think that's pretty good.
Okay. Poetry.
Fashion. I just started making fashion.
Oh my God, Maiara, you do a lot.
I do.
Uh-huh.
I work 7 days a week. I don't stop, but I love it. I'm absolutely a workaholic, but I love what I do. And everyone is constantly like, yeah, but what's your one thing? What's the like main focus? And I'm like, oh, you don't understand. That's not how this works.
Yeah.
To me, it's all storytelling through different mediums. And I get really burnt out on things if I'm only doing that one thing. So in a single day, I might spend a dedicated 4 hours writing, but then I have to move to something else.
Right.
Whether it's another script or whether it's music or whether it's prepping for a role. And then once I'm burnt out on that thing, I move to this thing, then I get re-inspired and reinvigorated. And then it actually informs something from the previous thing. And it's just like this beautiful, connected cycle of creative madness.
That's it. You just described it. That's what it looks like from the outside. Maiara's creative madness. She's like, I did this and this and this and this and this week. I'm like, what, dude? When do you sleep? What's happening? Why do you have 10 projects going at once? But I sort of get it at this point now with the podcast and my music and the other things I do. Like, Yeah,
you are doing that.
Yeah, it's fun. I
Yeah,
get it.
exactly.
It's fun. I love it. I
It
love my
is.
life.
Like I would much rather be exhausted from doing things I love than feeling bored and not knowing what to do with my time.
Yeah. So you have only led to good things in my life, which is a really it's a really beautiful thing. Like you have an ability to share things you're inspired by, or just live in such a way where like when you tell me to do something and I do it, it usually enriches my life. It's a beautiful thing. It's something I can trust about you when you call me and you're like, yo, get this thing or go on this or apply for this. I'm like, all right, Maiara.
You're like, I don't know what this is, but okay.
Damn. But one of the things that you did many, many years ago that inspired my life was you started going to Europe in the summer by yourself. You'd book a one-way ticket there and kind of figure out what you were going to do. You'd kind of go on this free-flowing self-trip to Europe. And as anyone doing that is inspiring, but I know for a lot of people out there, a lot of women out there, that's like crazy to them because it actually feels dangerous. Like you traveled solo as a female. Like I remember, I mean, you did this for like multiple summers and I was so inspired by it that it became a dream of mine, something I wanted to do. And just, I didn't all of my 20s, even though you did this 10 years ago, but I finally did that last summer. And it was like, straight up directly inspired by your trips. And I had such an incredible time. Will you tell me about your experiences with that?
Yeah, and then I would love to hear like what your favorite part of your trip was,
Cool.
or like the experience of it.
Cool.
So I think I was 24 at the time. I'd always wanted to go to Europe by myself and have that experience. I think I had gotten. Sometimes you get so stuck in your mind of the way that you think you're supposed to do things, and I was really kind of feeling like I was in a rut and needed to like break free from some old patterns. So I called it my summer of yes. So I was going to say yes to everything within reason. That part's important. So I only knew where I was staying that first night in Madrid, and I didn't know anything beyond that. At that point, I think I was planning on going for 6 weeks. And so I remember landing in Madrid, and my first experience with this word yes, I was in the elevator waiting to get down to the shuttles that would take me to a hotel, and there was this guy with long blonde hair and sunglasses and this guitar case next to him. He just looked like interesting. And so in my head, I was like, I should say something to him. He was probably in his like 60s or something. And then immediately my mind was like, no, you can't just say hi to this stranger. And then I was like, wait, no, this is the whole point, is to be able to break through these limitations and say yes to something that for whatever reason I intuitively want to do.
Right.
So then I was like, all right, I'm going to strike up a conversation with him. Ended up getting into a lovely conversation. He asked me what I was doing on this trip. I told him I didn't know where I was going or what my plans were. And he was like, well, I have a son in Amsterdam. He plays basketball. He's really sweet. Like, you should go meet up with him later in the trip. He gave me his email, and I was like, I'm not gonna reach out to this person. That's weird. But ended up meeting up with a different friend on that trip. And then he was like, didn't that guy give you this guy's information on Amsterdam? Like, let's go there. And I was like, but then I was like, I have to say yes. And that guy ended up being amazing. We stayed on his couch. He showed us all over Amsterdam, went to the Van Gogh Museum, some amazing bike rides. He took us to like amazing clubs. Like, when we never would have had that experience had I not just said yes. And my whole trip was like that. I was meeting incredible people. I was having magical experiences. And as a woman, because I want to touch on that part as well, you're aware of your surroundings, right? Like, if I was at a club by myself and I was making friends with people and at first they were really awesome, but then let's say they started drinking too much and I could just feel the energy shifting and becoming a little more aggressive, I would just take that as my cue to leave.
Yeah.
And then I would leave.
Yep.
And I would always just check in with myself. How am I feeling here? Do I feel safe? Do I feel comfortable? And I mean, I was walking around streets at like 3 a.m.
Yeah, I know how you live.
Yeah. I wouldn't necessarily recommend being as much of a risk taker as me. I want to ask you a question, then I'll share my one moment during that trip where I was kind of scared I was getting kidnapped. But beyond that, it was great. But wait, I wanted to ask you, so when you finally did take that trip, what opened up for you?
Well, man, your trip was at 24 and was for specific reasons, right? When you want to go on a trip like that and take like a month or more away from your life, like there's reasons for that inspiration or that call to do that. Yours was at 24. Mine at 31, it was different. Like it was post the pandemic. So during the pandemic, my life had gotten very small. Everything got really contained, to my apartment and my routines, and like, the life wasn't as big as it was before. There wasn't as many options. So that, and just some personal, like really tough 6 years of change in life, of all shit you saw. What opened up for me on that trip was like actually bringing me back to some of what I felt earlier in my 20s, which was like, like, first of all, I'm okay. I'm capable of moving through the world by myself, like, and in pretty much any situation. Like, I like who I am, and I like interacting with the world, especially out of my normal routines. And it was just that reminder that, like, the world is big and beautiful and, like, connected and fun. Like, going to Berlin and meeting like these dope girls from Birmingham in a club in Berlin, and then seeing them in Prague a week later in a park, like literally by accident.
Wait, by accident?
I had one of their Instagrams, and we were talking about maybe meeting. We knew we were both going to be in Prague at the same time. And we were talking about maybe meeting up at some point on that trip. And then we're just in the park, and it's like, there they are. And they had a whole crew of their friends who were so dope, and I was with mine, so we all hung out, like so that shit, like, and I had not been feeling that. Life had gotten, I don't know, man, life had gotten strange and hard, and it was just that reminder of like the magic of travel, the world, fun, opening up, being young enough to like walk around a city all day, So it was huge. It really shifted a lot for me, and I think it came at the perfect time. Even though I didn't make it to Europe my whole 20s, that trip was like essential.
Yep. I think everything kind of lines up in that way of like when you're ready for something, you take that step to do that.
Yeah.
I can say, like do this stuff while you're young, but if you're not ready to do it, then, I would never force anything upon anybody.
Yeah.
I think everyone's life is kind of on a different trajectory, and different moments happen at different times, and you have to respect what that is for you.
Yep.
But I definitely like highly recommend, even if you don't have the means to make it out of the country, I think even just exploring your city, exploring a city nearby, I think there's something about getting out of your comfort zone and getting out of your bubble to see what else is out there. It just expands your mind and what you believe is possible for you and your life. And also just understanding other people's life experiences, like you just become more open-minded to the human experience.
Definitely that. That's for sure something I love about Europe is just like our culture is like, from California to New Mexico, there's cultural differences there, but we're all still American. Like that same distance in Europe, like you're in a whole other history, culture, language, food.
It's so awesome.
It's so awesome. Yeah. I love that shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you did that a couple summers in a row, right?
Yeah, I had such an amazing time that first time. I was like, I'm just gonna keep doing this. Like, let's just keep the magic going. Okay, I'll share my kidnappings, my story that I thought that something bad was gonna go down.
Yes.
So I remember it was my first, I was in Spain. I had just visited Salvador Dali's house in this tiny little fisherman's town called Caracas. I was sitting by the water, enjoying like a glass of wine and jamon and bread. And I was just having the best time ever. I was like, I never want to leave Spain. And then a girlfriend who I met for 1 hour during one dinner, like 3 weeks prior, was like, hey, are you still in Europe? And I was like, yeah. She's like, oh, I'm going to Turkey. Do you want to meet us in 4 days? And I was like, no, in my head. But then I was like, fuck, I have to start. I have to say yes.
Yeah.
I have to say yes. And I was like, but I don't want to leave. And I was like, oh, okay, fine. I will meet you there in 4 days. I didn't really get enough information from her because I figured that we'd be getting to the airport at the same time. So I fly into Marmaris, which is like near the water. It looks like it's near the water because I was flying over and I was like, oh, great. So we're going to go on a sailing trip for a week. And, it'll take me 10 minutes to get there from the airport if she's not there. Get there. She's like, don't worry about us. Like, go find the driver. He'll have your name on a little plaque. And then, just we'll meet you there in a few hours. I was like, fantastic. I get down there to the parking lot and it's like 90 degrees and there are like 40 men down there who are either taxi drivers or waiting to pick people up. And, one thing I had learned was to always look like you know what you're doing and where you're going. Don't ever be like looking at your phone like, like, where am I? Like, so, I pretended like I knew what I was doing, but I didn't see my name on any sign. And the guys were like, like really starting to look at me. And I was like, ooh, what do I do here? So then I start looking for maybe the name of the sailing company. I find one plaque with the name spelled wrong. And I was like,
was it Mariah?
No, it wasn't even my name of the sailing company.
Okay.
So I was like, okay. So I go up to this guy and I was like, let's say it was just called like Blue Sailing. And I was like, Blue Sailing? And he was like, blah, 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 like started speaking in a different language, right?
Yep.
As they do. And then, and then so he started so two guys just started walking with me like through the sea of guys towards the parking lot. And I was like, whoa, no, I don't know what you're saying. Like, I don't know what's happening. We make it to an unmarked car, just a regular old silver car. And they're like, trying to get me to get in the car. And I'm like, hold on one second. I need to talk to your boss or something. I don't understand what you're saying, unfortunately. So they call their boss. I get on the phone with him. He's like, Blue Sailing. And then like continues talking and talking. Still don't understand what he's saying. So I look at this guy and then I look at this guy and I've got like 10 seconds to make a decision and decide, do I trust these guys?
Whew.
And I decided yes.
A risk. You took a risk.
I took a risk. I get in the car, okay? It's me in the middle seat, one guy here, and 2 guys in the front. So it is 4 adult men who I don't speak their language and me driving in a car. And I'm like, okay, this is interesting. So I'm like, we'll get to the water in like 10, 20 minutes max. 20 minutes goes by, 30 minutes goes by, 50 minutes goes by, and I'm like, and we're getting further and further away from the coast. Like, we're in the mountains. And I'm like, oh my God, this is really bad. So like I turn on my roaming data and I'm like, hey, I'm in a car with 4 guys. Like, I don't know what's happening right now. And she's like, I'm sure it's okay. Just keep your location on or whatever. So we pull off in the middle of the mountains to this derelict shack. It's a shack, a rundown shack on a gravel road. And I'm like, this is it. This is it. This is taken. This is what everyone was warning me about. So then I'm like game planning in my mind. I was like, all right, we're going to stop. I'm going to elbow this guy in the nose and this guy in the balls. And I'm going to just run into the mountains. So all like 3 of the 4 guys get out. They all disappear into the shack for 20 minutes. And I'm just like, what is happening? Are they like getting weapons? Like, are they calling people? Like, I was so nervous.
Was your heart like beating out your chest?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh
Meanwhile, trying to keep a poker face and like trying to be friendly with the driver. And then one of the guy comes back. He takes me out from the back seat and then puts me in the front seat. And then like tells us to leave. And I was like, what is going on? And then we proceed driving for another hour to an hour and a half. And then at this point, I'm just starting to like joke with the driver. And then we finally make it to the bay. And I still have no idea why there were 4 men in that car with me. But that was a massive risk. And I will definitely say, girls, do not get in a car with 4 men ever that you don't know.
Who don't speak English.
Who don't speak English or your language.
Yeah.
So that was I made it through. It was fine, but had my mom, known that I had done that,
no.
she would have really not been pleased.
But you ended up. It was all good, and you went on an incredible sailing trip, right?
Yeah, and then
you went on a boat for
and then I was
5
sailing.
days?
Yeah, and it was amazing because when you go to Greece, like I'm taking Greece as an example, and you go to see the ruins in Athens, it's just crowded and by so many tourists.
Yeah.
But then where we were sailing, we'd get off on these islands with these ruins, and we'd be the only people on the islands, and I just felt like I was in Indiana Jones or something, like climbing on them, sitting in them, just feeling the history.
Wow.
In crystal clear blue water, incredible food. Turkey's not a place I would go to alone as a woman. I would not feel safe there. There were moments I didn't even feel safe in a group. But it was beautiful. I would definitely go back. Istanbul's incredible.
I've heard.
But I was super grateful in the end. So had it not been my summer of yes, I never would have had that experience.
Right.
Not of the almost kidnapping, but of the sailing.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm glad that story ended the way it did. Otherwise, well, I wouldn't know you. Maiara went on her summer of yes and never came back.
Never came back.
Oh my God.
God, that's dark.
That's a dark timeline. Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, even for dudes, you got to watch out some places, but it's different.
Yeah.
It's different.
Did you ever feel unsafe at any time?
Nah, it's like you just got to be smart when you're out anywhere unfamiliar. Even Mexico, man. It's just don't be a fucking idiot.
Yeah, there's just certain places, yeah.
I actually like being in new spaces because I'm forced to be more aware. I can't default to muscle memory or just being blind and dumb to things. So I actually like it because I do feel a heightened sense of aliveness. Not because I'm looking out for danger, just because I'm looking out.
Yeah.
Because I don't know. I don't know these spaces.
Present.
I'm present. I'm aware, and I like that a lot. But yeah, no, I didn't feel any danger out there in the world. It's out there, but we were just vibing in cities in Europe, in the summer where everyone's just like, woo,
It's lovely.
Oh, it's lovely.
That's great. I'm so excited you're gonna get to go out there again soon.
Yep. Yeah, I'm doing what you did then now. Was your summer of yes inspired by Yes Day at Burning Man? Do you know? Do you remember? By my Yes Day at Burning Man? My first Burning Man, I went on a Yes Day, and it's possible, I think it was before that Europe trip for you. Yeah, so it's possible that story got into your head.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, then I should be thanking you, Devon.
I just wanted credit.
Because I thought it was the other way around. I thought I told people about that afterward. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
Yeah, one of my first Burning Man, one of the days I went out with a friend of mine and she was like, today's going to be a yes day. And again, within reason. If you absolutely feel the need to say no to something, do.
Exactly.
But it was just like you did. I mean, you did it on such a grander scale. But it was an exploration of how often am I saying no default? Yes. How often am I defaulting to a no, that's new.
Yeah.
So I'm not even actually considering it.
Exactly.
And so opening it up to a full day of yes, it was awesome.
Yeah.
It did teach me a lot of that. Oh man, some of the time I'm saying no and I'm actually just closing off to an experience.
And I actually still do that to this day. I'll do a yes day.
Yeah.
If I'm traveling and I don't want to do that for the whole trip, I've even done just a yes hour.
Yeah.
And I'll do it with friends too. Of all right, this is gonna be yes night.
Yeah.
And it's just a little way to create a little more magic in your life and become a little more open to things.
For sure, because we all stay comfortable. I definitely do, and especially I seem like a very personable person. I'm very extroverted, but even I get social anxiety sometimes. I know you do too.
Absolutely.
It's there are times where I'm just saying no just because I'm a little anxious, but I might be missing out on a great experience. A friend of mine, we were at this cafe outside this national park, Sequoia National Park, and we met this, the waitress was this middle-aged great woman who was treating us all kind, and she was like, oh, my son, he works at a pizza shop in the park and in the national park, and go, I'm gonna tell him you're coming and he's gonna take you on the dopest hike. And that was one of those situations where it would be so easy to say no, no, I don't know you. I don't know that kid. Like, we can take ourselves on a hike. But we were vibing, you know? It was all good. So we were like, sure, all right. And we went and met up with this kid. And he did. He took us on the dopest hike. Like,
so awesome.
And we had a great day. He took us to like this natural water slide.
What?
Yeah.
Which, how would you have known about that if you didn't live there and you didn't know the locals?
Exactly. So yes, that was one of those like nice saying yes experiences.
Yeah. I do think there is value in saying no as well. I think that's something I've had to learn getting older, because I think I used to say yes to so many experiences and I would just feel exhausted, socially exhausted, emotionally exhausted. And I think now I'm being much more protective of my time and my energy and my mental health, so that like I actually will say no more often now, which is what I in this phase of my life have been needing. And it's so there is a value to either side. It just depends where you're at in life at that moment.
For sure. I do think you need to have familiarity with both of those powers of saying yes and being open and flowing, and no and boundaries.
Yes,
both are
boundaries.
so important. Yeah. How are you with boundaries, Maiara?
You know, I'd like to think I'm getting better, but boundaries, what are those? I don't think I had those when I was younger. I was just like, I love everybody. I'll let anybody in. Take from me. Take. So I've had to learn the hard way so many times.
I know, I've watched it.
The importance of discernment and boundaries,
Yeah.
and making sure that any energetic exchange is reciprocal, and that you're not just giving. Even though I love to give, it's also important to be able to receive and recognize when someone is taking just for the sake of taking because they want your energy because it's nice or whatever.
Yeah.
But I feel like you had a bit of that in you as well.
For sure did.
Uh-huh.
I've talked a lot about it on this pod. For
Yep.
sure. It took me having my heart exploded to learn boundaries, and I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. It's so nice to have boundaries, to be a boundaried individual, and to like really. It took a long time to really, and I can't emphasize what an important part of growing up it is, to learn to recognize when a relationship isn't reciprocal. And however you gotta then limit that from your life, I don't care how you do it, do it. Like if it's not reciprocal, if you're the one giving, if you're the one who brings all the energy to the relationship, I don't need it.
Yep. And it's a tough lesson because it's hard when you get so emotionally involved with someone, whether it's a friend or a business associate or a romantic partner.
Yeah.
You know, because you just get so used to this emotional exchange that you have.
Yeah.
So it can be hard to pull away from it, but you have to keep checking in with yourself. Like I like to do check-ins. How does this make me feel before? How does it make me feel during? How does it make me feel after? And if it's making me feel drained and exhausted, tired, headache, whatever it might be, and it's doing that on a consistent basis, my body's trying to tell me something. This is not good for me.
Yeah.
But if I leave a situation feeling energized or inspired or happy, then good. That there's something that's positive about that. And that's not to say you have to feel good all the time with your friends or whoever you're with. But the 80-20 rule, I think, is a pretty good,
Definitely.
barometer there.
Yeah, you're trying to look at a pattern.
Yes.
And man, it's been cool, like, growing up together, and, like, you know, it's not like we hang out and have been super close since I met you. It's like we've come in and out of each other's lives enough times that, like, over the last few years, it's like I've seen this person through enough phases of my life. Like, I know what the energy is now. Over so much time and so many different circumstances, I'm like, yep, we're good. We're good for life. For life. Like, I'll love you forever.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, you and a bunch of our friends.
And when you find that those lifelong connections, there's nothing sweeter. There's nothing better. And you just know that you can be 100% yourself in whatever way that manifests, whether you're happy, whether you're depressed, whether things are going great, whether you're tired. It just doesn't matter. Just being in presence with each other is incredible.
Yeah.
And you know each other so well that like sometimes you just don't even need to talk.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, there was like a day recently where you pulled like a bunch of our friends that like we were all in these like depressed moods, like totally hermiting in our homes.
Oh, it was rough.
Oh man. And you were like, hey, like I'm going to be going out of town soon. Like come over. And like, I don't think I've ever had such a hard time saying yes and like getting myself to go over to your place. But then the moment I was there, I was like, wow, we really all needed this because we were just in one of those introverted phases.
Yeah, that was fascinating. So this was like a month ago. I was coming off a few months of really just starting to spiral on some shit personally and really feeling very isolated and very hurt about certain wounds in my life and just struggling. What was amazing was getting together with you and Jen, and for very different circumstances, but you guys were feeling the same pattern that I was. It was for literally different reasons, different circumstances, right? But the outcome was very similar. We all arrived to a similar feeling in ourselves, and then a similar night hanging out together, and that was very healing to just be like, oh, their reasons are different, but I do feel less alone.
Yeah.
Like, oh, my friends are feeling this level of like isolation and hurt. Like, all right.
And interesting that we were all feeling it at the same time.
I know.
And like literally we were so ridiculous and so silly for hours straight. Like we were talking nonsense, like complete and utter nonsense for hours on end, laughing like I don't even know, like 9-year-old children. About nonsense.
Yeah.
And I hadn't laughed like that in so long. I had been going into such like deep processing of everything, really intense emotional shit. And then to just be silly with my best friends, I was like, oh, we can, like, life can be light as well. I don't always have to just like dive into the deepest part of humanity.
No, it's got to be silly too.
Yeah. Yep.
The inner child still is alive and well when you're with your real friends.
For sure. Our inner childs are just fine.
Our inner children are rabid.
Like sometimes I gotta be like,
sometimes like chill, bro, chill.
Just relax. Just go over there, go play in a corner because this is adult time.
For real. We're together. It's like I feel bad for the other adults in the room. They don't.
They're just like, what is happening?
You better catch up and join the party because the kids are playing.
Kids' table's way more fun than the adult table anyway. So.
Yeah, I think we'll stay that way forever.
Yeah, I imagine.
It's also why we all bond so much. I mean, you introduced me to other people who I will know Tyler, Kelly, like. These are people you grew up with who are now best friends of mine, you know?
Yeah, good people know good people, and then they meet, and then they're like, oh, you're awesome.
Yeah,
Let's be friends.
That's always a good barometer. If you have like a new friend, see who their friends are and judge them. Judge them for it. Judge them accordingly. But no, I really like when I meet my friends' friends and I go, oh, they're great too. Yeah. Oh, this is a good sign. This is a good thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've started learning like it's important. I look for people who have friends. You know, I think that's important. I think when people. And it's not to say, oh, everyone has to have 1 million friends, but I think like it's a good sign when people have at least a couple of good friends in their lives who they've known for a bit of time. Because I have met some people who kind of flip from person to person, don't really have a friend group, and I find that there can be some complications.
For sure.
With that.
For sure. Yeah, and like if you start to date someone who doesn't have friends, it's a red flag. Yeah. It's a red flag. It's a red flag that people look over often.
Or if they've lost a lot of friends over time and they're constantly blaming that other person. But then after time you realize it's probably not just the other people. It's probably a combination of things. I also find taking accountability for your end of things is very important. So in
Yeah.
general, when people only blame other people and never are like, well, this is like my side of things as well that I take responsibility for. Like, I just think that's important.
Yeah.
I think just blaming others takes away that sense of self, that responsibility that we all have as human beings.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it can't ever be everyone else's fault. That's not how life works.
Not all the time.
It
you
can't.
know?
Yeah, it can't
It's
always
impossible.
be everybody else's fault.
Yeah.
So tell me about. You are Brazilian.
Yes.
You lived in Brazil as a baby child.
Mm-hmm.
You have family in Brazil. And last year, you got the chance to go film a Brazilian TV show.
Yes, I was down there for 10 months living in Rio. It was such a full experience. When I say full, I mean it was like the highs of the highs, the lows of the lows, and everything in between. I'm so grateful I went down there. I met some of the most incredible people who will be lifelong friends. I love Brazil. Like the culture, the food, the music, everyone is just so warm and will just kind of like wrap you up in this huge hug. And that, I mean that like literally and metaphorically.
Yeah.
Like they just invite you into their family.
Yeah.
And that's awesome. And also like I live in a pretty industrial part of LA, so living by the beach, a tropical beach,
Yeah.
and going to the beach like a couple times a week, it was so good for my soul.
Yeah.
I'm like a very like go, go, go person.
Yeah.
And so it really slowed me down to like a more normal level
Yeah.
that like I needed.
Yeah.
That I carried on with me coming back.
Yeah.
But it was really intense, like learning, because it was a show set in biblical times. So not only is it Portuguese, but it's period piece Portuguese to a
Right.
certain extent.
Right.
So
not modern.
Yeah, not the way that I
slang.
would ever
Yeah,
talk.
yeah.
So it took me more time with the script, and there was like one scene I had that was a 3-page monologue in Portuguese, and I had been in LA and flew straight back from LA into Rio, didn't sleep, drove straight to set to do this 3-page monologue, and you only get like 1-2 takes for everything there. And I was like, I have no idea how this is going to go, but it fortunately went really well. And I remember when I first went down there thinking I was 100% fluent in Portuguese.
Yeah.
And quickly realized that because of all the slang and all the different things that had changed since I'd been really spending a lot of time there, that I was not. So I couldn't tell stories the way that I like to tell stories.
Yeah.
And I couldn't tell jokes. Like I couldn't, and every time I wanted to chime in with something, I'd have to think about it, and then they were already
You're
like,
missing the timing.
and then,
Yeah. Yeah.
It was brutal. So the first couple months, I was really quiet, and everyone was like, wow, like she's sweet, but she's so quiet. And I was like, no, it's because I can't communicate the way that I want to. And I'm a bit of a perfectionist. I know this is shocking. So finally, I had to let go of my ego, and I had to be like, I got to fuck up. I got to be
Yeah.
okay fucking up.
Yeah.
And then and making mistakes.
Yeah.
And just keep going. At least I'll be communicating.
Right.
So I
Say
just
it wrong, but say it.
Say it wrong, but say it. Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So I just kept being wrong, and then eventually I was right.
Amazing.
And then by the time I left, I was like, okay, I've got a good handle on this now.
I loved that. I loved catching up with you while you were there and you telling me that. You're like, I thought I was fluent in Portuguese, but it's different when you're like around people every day and like the nuance of telling stories and the nuance of
Yeah.
humor.
Exactly.
That's different than like knowing how to say the word, like knowing how to get by.
For sure.
The nuance of culture and
you're around a bunch of
humor and
actors, right? So
who
they're
are
all
expressive, talking super
storytellers.
fast.
Oh
Yeah.
my God. I was like, there were certain times. I remember a time where I like came home to my hotel room and I was just crying. And I was like, this is exactly as hard as I thought it would be.
I'm so glad you went.
Yeah. It was life changing in good and bad ways.
That's
but,
what I figured. I remember when you were like debating it, and I'm bummed at some of the bad things that happened to you down there, but I remember when you were debating it, and it just was like 10 months shooting a show in Brazil, like no matter what happens, it's going to be life changing. Like this is going to be a formative experience, and like, don't we fucking want that? Like, isn't that the joy of our dynamic actor creative life? Like, is to have these. So
Yeah.
answer the call.
Lots of life experiences.
Yeah.
For sure. You've probably talked about this at length on the show now, but how was it for you going back and shooting the rest of Rust?
I actually have not talked about it very
Oh.
much. Not yet. Not since coming back. Yeah. Well, that's our show. Yeah, finishing Rust was a lot. I mean, I'm grateful. I'm grateful we got to finish it. It's something I never thought we would do. And for me, like just on a personal healing level, finishing it was closure, like allowed me to release things in a way that I wouldn't otherwise have been able to do. And it's something I never thought I'd be able to do because I didn't foresee Helena's husband wanting us to finish the movie, which is the only reason we finished. So it was a surprise. It was really painful. It was really painful to go back. It brought up a lot of shit. But getting to finish the film, I'm glad, it healed some things.
Yeah. You came back different. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was like a lot that was being stirred up before you went out. And I remember having a conversation before you left. I was like, I think something's going to start shifting for you while you're out there and that you're going to feel better when you come back. And I can see it. I can see it in your eyes.
Dude.
I can see it in the way that you're talking.
Dude, I'm lighter than I've felt in 2 years or more even. The crazy thing that I recognized that I was able to like look at, and I think this goes beyond just my experience on Rust, but something I recognized was what happened on Rust was so traumatic. I mean, it was trauma. It was so sudden, so traumatic that it opened up this fucking wound in me that then every wound in my life was opened. And that must happen to other people, where it's like the Rust trauma then left all of my trauma open and raw, and really took a lot to start trying to piece it all back together. And I never thought we'd finish, so I was just trying my best to heal all these things, but like everything was hurting from this. And then finding out we were going to finish and the prolonged schedule of going to shoot it, like everything was raw, everything and anything unresolved in me, including the pain that I have around Rust, those wounds, I mean, that wound will be there for my life. Like it's part of my life now, but it was just open and raw. And so was everything else. And so going to finish, I actually was able to feel there was a part of it that going to finish was opening it up again, but then actually completing the film and completing it for Helena and like all of that allowed me to heal up a little bit. And then other things in my life feel easier to carry now because it's not just this open, festering wound.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because we don't always get closure, right?
Facts.
So what do you think helped you process, and besides the actual closure element of it, like what were you doing to deal with the opened wound of your life?
I don't know, dude. I don't know. Getting by, surviving. Like it's a lot of feeling. What it requires is feeling it, feeling it, and then allowing yourself to kind of move through the feeling and like integrate the feeling, release the feeling, whatever the words are. It's like, but sometimes that pain is so much, you're actually just surviving for months on end. You're not actually facing the wound. It's too much. It's too much to feel it. So I don't know, man. The months leading up to Rust were really hard. Yeah. And I mean, therapy helps. When I really am stuck, I call my therapist and I talk things out with him. Trying to limit my habits of distraction and comfort that are maybe innocuous when I'm not going through something. Like if I'm fine, they're hit or miss, like they're fine. But if I'm running from something, they can be actually hindering my healing, trying to be as healthy as I can. But I don't know. I don't know. We don't always get closure, and I don't know what to do with that. I feel for the people who have experiences like this and then you don't get any form of closure because you don't always get it.
Yeah.
You don't always get to have that conversation with that person. You don't always get to complete the film. Like you don't always get this. And man, I don't know what you do with it. I did hear a nice little analogy of like the trauma, the grief, the pain doesn't shrink. You just grow bigger around it. So I really like that. I think that is what happens as you learn to hold it more in your heart and actually feel it rather than like hide it or numb it or run away from it. As you just hold that pain that when it first happens feels bigger than you, you eventually start to grow around it. And I like that.
I like that too.
I like that. That's what I was doing before I knew I was finishing Rust, was just trying to like feel it when it comes up.
Yep.
And, you know?
Yeah. So to piggyback on that as well, because like I said, even though I had a great experience, I've had one of the hardest years of my life that I still don't have closure on.
Yeah.
And it was really brutal. I remember coming back from Brazil and kind of being in a full-on depression. Like we were kind of in similar states again for different reasons.
Yeah.
And I think allowing yourself to feel it rather than running away, rather than distracting yourself. And some days it's just surviving.
Yeah.
And some days it's like, all right, like I'm going to let myself feel this. I'm going to let myself cry. I'm going to let myself yell. I'm going to let myself not know what the fuck I'm supposed to do.
Yep.
Because I think when we run from those feelings and push them down, we may be pushing them down for that moment or that week or that year, but it comes back. It's like these little earthquakes, you know, that like end up like exploding.
Yeah.
But I think dealing with it as they come, because grief is weird like that, right? It's not just one big wave and then you get over it and you're fine.
No.
It comes in waves and randomly, like years later. Like I know even for you and like your parents' divorce, right?
Yeah.
Like it hit you again recently.
7 years later. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hit me as if it was happening.
Yeah,
like,
which is wild.
It's crazy.
So crazy.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to be patient with ourselves and understand that like it's not just like, oh, you're gonna get over your grief and be fine. Like no, like just it's gonna come up in different ways, get triggered in different ways. And I always like to say like I've got like a tool belt that I use that like has my different things that work for me.
Yeah.
Whether that might be, you know, writing, meditating, working out, just talking with a friend, therapy, making music, you know, writing a letter to that person I'm upset at, even if I don't send it.
Yeah.
And some days, one of those tool belts that worked today is not going to work tomorrow. And then that one may not work the next day, but I still have this huge tool belt with like these different things I can pull out and work to like process the emotions and again like just being patient with yourself through the process because it's work, you know. And I like what you were saying about like expanding beyond that pain, and it also turns into resilience.
That's it.
Like because any human alive today has suffered in some form or another, probably multiple times throughout their lives, and the fact that we're still here is a testament to that resilience. And I think that's why as we get older, we just stop caring as much about certain things that really used to feel like life or death.
Yeah.
Because you're just like, does that matter?
Yeah.
And not only, and maybe it does matter in that moment, but like, you know, you'll get through it. Whereas when you're in your like teens or early 20s, you don't know if you'll get through it.
No.
It feels like the end of the fucking world.
Oh yeah, you lose a friendship or a
You're like,
relationship.
This is
the end. You don't make the team, whatever the fuck. Like,
whatever it is. You didn't get the job. Like it's over.
Yeah.
But it's not.
Nope.
Life keeps going.
Yep. That's what I love about growing up. It's like, man, you go through enough cycles of this shit. Hopefully you're learning and expanding and not repeating.
Yes.
But you go through enough cycles of the shit, you go like, oh yeah, cool. I know I'll get through this. Or like, I know this drama is irrelevant. Like, I'm not even going to engage with that shit anymore.
Totally, that
There's so
as
much I've learned to
well.
just be like, oh, if you're in that frequency, like, I don't even fuck with that anymore.
It's so nice to even be there to be like, oh no, like that's something I would have been like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? How do I fix this? And now it's just like, nah.
Nah, and I like the tool belt thing. I think that's a key to growing up is, man, be expanding your tools because the tool you used last year might not work for the new situation, but you want to have a lot of options for how to when you're ready to either build, create, or get through something, when you're ready to actually take those action steps, you want a lot of options of how to do it. Because there's also a period where it's like, I don't want to go right to solutions always. I don't want to go right into action always. There is an element of like just needing to let the new reality wash over me and all the feelings and just go through that weird time. But then when I'm ready to take action, I do have a decent toolbox that I've acquired over the years that I'm grateful for. Acting's been an emotional resilience and opening, like teacher that has bled into my personal life,
For sure. I'm just grateful that we have creative outlets for these things because I don't know how I would get through certain things if I didn't have a place to put it.
No, I wouldn't be well.
Yeah.
You wouldn't either.
No.
No.
Don't
You're
know
barely well now.
Yeah.
Oh, man. You got any fun plans for the summer, or are you hanging out?
Well, usually I go on some kind of trip or I'm on location, and this will be the first summer in, I don't know, maybe 12, 13 years where I don't go anywhere. I am going to visit my sister in Seattle. I want to take a train up to go see her.
Cool.
But beyond that, I'm going to finish projects here. I'm going to keep building in my creative studio, finishing up on Good Trouble. This week, actually.
Good Trouble, Freeform.
Yes. Hulu,
Freeform.
Yes.
Show, Good Trouble. Maiara's on it. Watch her. Also, Bible Brazilian show. What's it called?
Hayes.
Hayes?
Yeah, it's like REIS.
I know. I don't know if you guys knew this at home, but an R in Brazil is pronounced H, so it's not even
at the beginning
Rio.
of a word.
If it's at the beginning of a word. So it's not even Rio de Janeiro.
It's Rio de Janeiro.
Hugh. Hugh. Dude, I'm so bummed I wasn't able to make it. I was going to go visit Maiara in Brazil. I mean, I shouldn't say I'm super bummed because my niece was born. So instead I went to Australia to see my beautiful niece, Luna, which is what prevented me from going to Brazil. But every time Maiara posted a story or a post from Brazil, it was just her and like 10 beautiful women. And I was like, I have to go to there.
We would like send Devon like videos of like me and like all of my actress girlfriends.
Just to torture me?
Just to torture him. It was so fun.
I'm sure it was.
It was a blast.
I knew I would get the videos and I would be like, she's loving that this is hurting me. But it's fun hurt. Even I was laughing. I was like, I gotta go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll make it down there at some point.
Absolutely. I'll be back every year.
Ned's was huge in Brazil. I got to get down there.
Oh, yeah. You have so many Brazilian fans.
Yeah.
Yeah, come on. Rio
de Janeiro.
Oh, my God. I'm embarrassed for you.
How do I say thanks? How do I say hello to my Brazilian fans?
You can say oi.
Oi.
You can start with that. Oi. Pros meus fãs.
I'm out already.
Say obrigado.
Obrigado.
Obrigado is thank you.
Obrigado.
And say te amo.
Te amo.
Te amo.
Te amo.
Te amo.
Te amo.
It's like te amo, but te amo. Yes, you can say
it's like I love you.
Yeah.
Obrigado. Te amo.
It's kind of Italian, but like it'll work.
Well, I'm kind of Italian, so. All right. Well, I love you. We can talk for 5 hours, and we will.
Yep.
But off the podcast.
Yes.
I like to leave our listeners and audience members with a little tip. So do you have a tip for succeeding in growing up?
Yes.
How does one succeed in growing up?
I mean, that's an interesting question because success is going to be different for everyone in terms of that.
Exactly.
But, a tip I would say is they always say, like, don't let people tell you what to do. But I was thinking about it and I was like, people will always tell you what to do. And it's your choice to listen to them or trust in your own path. So ultimately, like, trust your own intuition. Like, imagine you're in a library and it's full of, let's say, self-help books or something. Take each one, read some passages out of it, and see what works for you. Like, don't look at someone's life and be like, I have to do everything exactly the same as that person. Do what works for you. And you're gonna mess up. But then you're gonna get back up and you're gonna keep going.
I love it. Yeah.
What's your tip for growing up? Get some of your growing up merch?
Yeah. Buy growing up merch. That's how you succeed. That's how you succeed in your growing up journey is buying my growing up merch. Exactly. Yeah, I usually leave it to the guests, but I'll leave a little tip on friendship since you're here, which is you can't shortcut a close friendship. You can feel almost instantly if you like the vibe or not, if you're paying attention, if you're not being just so optimistic or blind, or if you're just not so grateful just to have anyone talk to you that you're like, oh, this person will do. No. You'll feel a vibe right off the bat if it feels good with someone. And that's great. That's a great seed for a friendship. But you can't shortcut a close friendship. You can't shortcut getting to know someone, and you can't shortcut trust. So if you find a new friendship in your life, someone you're excited to meet, just over time, continue to hang out. It's okay if months go by and you don't fucking talk. You don't need, as adults, man, I see you fucking once every 6 months sometimes, but you're one of my closest people in my life. It's like, you can't shortcut that type of closeness. So if you find people that you like, keep checking in with them over time. Watch each other and support each other through different phases of life. And you'll know after maybe a few years if that person is someone you want to decide to hold on to for life. I think just watch out for trying to rush a friendship. I think a lot of people do it. Where
Friendships,
it's like,
relationships, business partnerships.
Where it's like, I just met this person. I'm giving them all of my trust and all of my love, and we're going to be best friends forever. It's like, whoa. That's not how nature works. It's just not how it works. You won't know just because you hung out with them and had fun one summer that they're lifelong friends. You got to see each other through the seasons of life, and then you'll really know. Mm-hmm. And I'm grateful to have friends like you in my life, Maiara.
Oh, shucks. No. Thanks, Dev.
Go follow Maiara on all the things at Maiara Walsh. It's not Mariah. It's not Maiara. It's not Miata.
It's not Maiaria.
It's not Maiaria because that's gross. It's Maiara for the Portuguese speakers. M-A-I-R-A.
Wow,
Walsh.
You spelled that wrong.
M-A-I-A-R-A.
There
Damn.
we go.
Sorry. It's just, I didn't write it.
No. It's
M-A-I-A-R-A.
Cool. We've only known each other like 15
Shut
years.
Shut the fuck up. Go follow Maiara on all the things. What's coming out in your life? Good Trouble's out.
Good Trouble will be, and more episodes will be coming out of that, and new music will be launched. Made some music with a Brazilian producer. Super stoked on that.
Dope.
And stuff at the Creative Studio, Dreamco.
Dope. Yeah, Dreamco's incredible. I love your place. Can't wait to come back. Brazilian Netflix show is out now. Raiz.
It's not Netflix.
Oh.
It's just called Raiz. It's on. It's called Record TV, but it's Record because it's got that H.
All right, listen, you guys heard it. That's out, and then congrats on your feature almost being done. We'll find out when that's
Thank you.
Going somewhere.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Love you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.